Learn to pay attention to when you're losing your energy to a wound or to yesterday. You can feel it. You can feel it in your biological system. You can feel it when you find yourself getting depressed and you say to yourself, why am I depressed? Psh, look to your history. Because you might find it goes that way. Look to a relationship. Look to some form that's causing you to lose your power because it reminds you of yesterday. Listen to yourself. Listen to the vocabulary you use when you're speaking with other people. Watch how you interact with them. And when somebody says, how are you? Listen to yourself. Do you come out negative first or positive? Do you come out with a sense of wanting to engage them in, oh, you poor thing type of dynamic? Or do you come out with this sort of sense of, I'm really okay. I can note, you can have something sad going on in your life and still be okay. All right? You can have something traumatic going on in your life and still be okay. We have more than one reality system available to us, and we have to start thinking about that. The last thing I want to share with you on this particular subject is to bear in mind that it's become almost ordinary these days for people like us to also turn our attention to the spiritual place, to the place spirituality has in the healing process in our lives. And we are now prone to ask questions like, well, for what reason was I born? What's the meaning of my life? What am I doing here? This has a great deal of impact on the healing because as we heal who we are, we begin to ask very different questions about ourselves. We begin to ask more mature questions spiritually about ourselves. And here again, there's going to be a tremendous risk and a whole process of healing and release that goes on. I want you to imagine this. Imagine that you're vacuuming your house and you decide to ask, I wonder for what reason I was born. Now, we ask that question perhaps many times in our lifetime, only this time you really mean it. Okay? And sitting on a chair watching CNN is your angel. And your angel's looking at you. She's heard you, he's heard you ask that question a million times, only this time you mean it. So now your angel gets up and says, okay, I'm finally going to take over your life. I'm going to do something serious. And your angel says, we're going to reorganize your life in such a way so that you have a very different level of power inside yourself. So your angel says, look, I'm going to take over here, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reorganize your job. Now, do you want to quit your job, or do you want me to get you fired? All right? And so the next thing you know, you go to work, and things are different, and you can't figure out why, because all you know is you started to ask a more profound question, which is, for what reason was I born? You have no idea that this is the way, oftentimes, prayers get answered. So now the next thing you know, you're fired, and then your angel says, okay, we checked that off. Now, the partnership you're in, you're not in the best partnership for you since you're asking very different kinds of questions. So, are you going to break up this partnership, or should I? And the next thing you know, your romantic partnership is either a little bit on the faltering side, or it breaks up completely, or you find yourself not able to relate to this person. And your angel says, I'm giving you 1 more month. Do something about this, or I'm taking over. Next thing you know, that relationship is over. And so then the angel says, okay, now I want you to alter your diet, get on a different exercise program, and do this because all of this is what you need to do to move on to the next step of your life and to begin the journey of discovering for what reason you were born. By this time, you're squat flat out, right? You've been fired and your mate's left you and you have no idea, and you're laying there thinking, what? And you know, your tendency would be to fall into tremendous patterns of resentment unless you held in your mind, wait a minute here, there's only one force that could make such a mess of my life, and it's not human. And from that point of view, you stand back and you say, I'm going to take a very different look at my life. And I think I'm going to take a look at it from the point of view that I'm living a very richly guided life. And interpreting the events of my life and the relationships of my life through that lens of wounds is probably, and of being a victim and of holding on to wounds, is probably not a wise thing. Indeed, it may be the worst thing I could ever do for myself. And that the wisest thing is to learn this, is to learn to step outside of your life, take a look at it from the observational mode. And even if you said to yourself, I'm not looking at me, I'm looking at some person who's going through this experience, who needs to learn this, and who needs to move on to a very different segment or chapter in her life or in his life. And from that point of view, what happens is your spirit becomes stronger, because all of a sudden, even though it hurts, and even though in the beginning, this is going to take discipline. You have to work. This is going to take routine, and it's going to be a challenge. But what happens is, as you get to the point where you are able to see yourself and your life in a more profound way, the challenges we face every day that are helping us get to that more profound place within ourselves don't seem to be as overwhelming. And forgiveness doesn't seem to be that much of an effort. And getting our spirit back doesn't seem to be the journey it is today, because we don't lose it so easily. We become more discriminating about why and how we're losing our spirit. All of a sudden we'll say to ourselves, this isn't worth losing my spirit over. My spirit's stronger than this. I'm not going to let it slip out of me because someone criticized me. And I'm not going to let it slip out of me because someone took my parking space. Have you ever seen what happens there? I mean, come on. People have to go to therapy because someone took their parking space. Now, come on here. You know, we've got a lot to learn in what it means to hold on to our spirit, but if we can, the payoff to our body is going to be fantastic, because not only will our body be healthy, but the incredible notion, that profile of ourselves as wounded beings, will no longer have the clout it does in ourselves. And we won't see ourselves anymore as being primarily weak, trying to become strong, but primarily strong and able to handle anything that seems to be able to make us weak. We need to reverse that. And in doing that, I'm convinced that we will establish a very different relationship, not only with each other, but certainly with the manner in which we handle illness in ourselves, crises in our lives, that every single part of this world we live in would have to shift. Now, I realize that sounds like I'm presenting a kind of health utopia, but I'm not. I'm really talking about something that if you thought about it in your own life, and I know I have in mine, that every time I really have applied what I'm talking about, and it's just as hard for me. Just because I teach it doesn't mean I can do it. But when I can, I am incredibly grateful for the fact that I really have pulled off something energetic. I've really saved my spirit from what I would call a bad mission, or some kind of situation that sent it back into the past, and I had to spend 2 more years getting it back. No, I'm going to tell you now, pay attention to what you do with your thoughts. Pay attention to the attitudes that you invest your spirit and your energy into. I'm going to try to live in present time to the best of my ability, and here's the last part, celebrate your life. Celebrate your life. Instead of spending a lot of time, and people spend a lot of time, regretting what their life looked like, regretting how they're living, looking at what should have been, could have been, or would have been. Begin to take a look at your life from the perspective that this is exactly the way it should have been. I am living the most wonderful life, and if it's not wonderful today, it might be tomorrow. In fact, it will be tomorrow, because all things move in a cycle. And above all, never ever think that anybody on this planet has authority over your future, because that's not in anybody's hands but yours. And the biggest thing in our hands is, what quality do we want our future? What quality do I want our lives? And I know, and I deeply believe, and I leave you with this thought, that one of the greatest ways to ensure a quality tomorrow is by leaving a sad yesterday far behind.